a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and we just finished watching the 49ers draft, well, all the teams draft, day 3 of the draft, and man, I'm pretty excited to talk about the 49ers picks today. Came away with a lot of good players that I'm excited about, and I am joined here today with Rohan from 49ers Web Zone. He's also a host, one of the hosts on 49ers Red Zone podcast with Marco as well. How you feeling today, Rohan? You are muted.
All right, that's a good start. It's been a busy day, though. The 49ers have been obviously going crazy, not only with their draft picks, they obviously stayed put, which means we saw multiple selections, 6 in total. And then we obviously are getting a ton of UDFA information. So busy day, but I mean, that's what we get excited about come draft time. We want to see these draft selections and who we end up starting in a way, or who we end up kind of picking out of obviously a ton of draft crush that a lot of people have.
Yeah, and you said it. That was probably one of the biggest surprises to me, the fact that the 49ers didn't make any moves at all. They didn't trade up, they didn't trade down. So that was a little surprising, something that I'm accustomed to them doing in past drafts. But let's look at some of the names that they selected on day 3. We'll talk about every one of these guys one by one. But as a whole, how are you feeling about this day 3 group that we saw today?
I will say interesting. I think that's a one word to describe it, because the 49ers definitely went in a route that I didn't expect them to go. Like, you obviously thought, oh, the 49ers are definitely going after a safety. They're definitely going after a center, right? People thought about Alex Mack,
Yes.
who essentially is like, he's staged to retire. We don't know the details behind it, but it seems like it. And obviously the safety position left by Jaquiski Tartt. We signed George Odom the offseason, but there are questions to whether there is a long-term starter or even a short-term starter opposite of Jimmy Ward with the position group that we have that you can rely on. And the 49ers chose to opt against going with both of those positions, instead focusing towards the interior offensive line and offensive tackle with Burford and Nick Zakelji. And then obviously 2 cornerbacks. There's Forte and defensive tackle, and then ending the rounds with a quarterback, which definitely adds some intrigue to this draft class.
I feel like the 49ers do this every year where we, the fans, and media on the outside looking in, we always think, okay, these are their needs. And then they go and draft someone completely different, or for the most part, best player available, I would assume, based on their big board. They always come away with some surprises, and this draft was no different. One day we'll just learn this is how they do it, and not be so disappointed when they don't draft the guys that we want them to. But let's start talking about the first pick that the 49ers did today. This happened in the 4th round. 134 overall, the tackle out of UTSA, Spencer Burford. Man, I mean, if you're looking at his RES chart, you can see his 10-yard split is green. A lot of people have pointed out that some of Kyle Shanahan's picks, or the 49ers picks, they have a good 10-yard split. So is this something that they really covet?
I'd like to think so, because essentially what does the 10-yard split indicate? How quick you can move out, and especially for the 49ers, they want that first step, that first quickness for you to be able to move out in space. And also it kind of indicates how fast can you react. So when you have that 10-yard split, especially in pass coverage, that is, you have the ability to react quick enough where you can come back and finish up your pass protection. But I think that it is important. Spencer Burford obviously is an interesting pick, to say the least, because you have a guy with 6'4", you said it, rare length, but he's small. He's not a 6'4", 320, 330 kind of guy. He's 6'4", 305 pounds, and he likely, while he played tackle he played guard and he played both sides of tackle, and he played guard, and he also like projects in a way at both positions. I think he slides in kind of as a guard in the NFL, which is interesting. I heard a comment earlier today. I want to get your take on it regarding Burford. The 49ers kind of have a tendency to draft players and then move them around on the offensive line away from their position that they play in college. I want to know, what do you think about that, and why do you think in a way that they do that?
Some they do that a lot, and it's not just the offensive line. I feel like there's been a couple of times they've done that with defensive line players as well,
Right.
uh, which I have different outlook on how they do that on the defensive line. But on the offensive line, I think sometimes it makes sense. I saw even with some of the other picks like Zakel as well, like people were saying he's more of a guard as well, and so I think that's just based on the things that they do well and their athletic profile and what translates the best at the next level. So I don't really have a problem with it per se. Um, I mean, I don't know. I just hope this one works out. You mentioned the position versatility. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that if they see him as a guard, he'll always be there, right? It's good to know that he can play those other positions as well. Left tackle, left guard, right tackle as well. He had a 98.3 PFF pass blocking efficiency grade in 2021. And again, he offers good versatility, good depth. I would assume this is a depth signing. Yeah, they have a lot of guys on the offensive line that they can kind of, see who comes out on top.
Right. And I think it's interesting because the 49ers, like you said, they like these versatile type of players. They have a ton on their roster. Daniel Brunskill is the epitome of that. He's played at
Yeah.
legitimately all five positions on the offensive line, can slide in anywhere, and potentially projects to be the starting center for the 49ers in 2022. Then you also have a guy like Justin Skule who can play on both sides. You have a guy like Jalen Moore who can play at tackle, primarily a tackle, but Kyle Shanahan has indicated he might use him at guard this year. So you have these guys where they like to use these versatile players. And it's interesting because a guy we're going to talk about a little later as well projects more as a guard. He himself said it despite playing tackle at the collegiate level. So that's kind of their MO in a way with these offensive linemen. They want versatile players where they have tackle experience, but they prefer them as guards in the NFL. And it is interesting because the 49ers obviously run a scheme that not many teams run. They run the zone outside zone scheme where they prefer the agility and they prefer the quickness as opposed to maybe pass protection with their offensive linemen. I think Burford to me is more of a projection pick. I think he definitely has the capability, but at the moment, I don't know how refined he is, especially in pass protection, which signifies that he probably isn't a day one starter for the 49ers. I think he is more of a pick potentially for 2023 with hope that they can project him or, develop him into a starting caliber player should Mike McGlinchey go or should there not be an immediate solution at right guard in 2023. And so that's where I think Burford kind of slides in. But the upside is definitely there because you think that he does have quick feet. I think that that's valuable for him. And I think he, like a lot of people were saying, oh, wow, this could be in a way, our Trent Williams after seeing the clip that I think Brad posted. He's got the power when he moves in space. He's pretty good. And so right now, I think it's all about refinement and pass protection for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I would caution on, getting opinions on, offensive linemen just based on highlights. There's a lot more
Right.
to these
Definitely.
players than their highlights. I mean, yeah, it's great. He can do these things, he can be very physical, but at the end of the day, it's all about being consistent, and that's what's going to make you a starter on the offensive line. Whether or not he can do that, that's yet to be seen. I agree with you, Rohan. I don't think that he's going to be a starter at this level at right now. I think he projects as depth at most, which is
Definitely.
fine. They need depth. So I'm okay with that. I'm good with that pick. Interesting enough, I mean, Zach Tom was on the board
Yeah.
when they made this pick, and he actually ended up going shortly after to the Ravens. What do you think about that? I know there's a lot of talk of, maybe the 49ers don't feel that they need a center, or that they needed to select a center in this draft. They have Daniel Brunskill. They could also look to JC Treader. Now that the draft is over, I mean, what do you think there?
I think Zach Tom would have been a nice pick. I really do. I thought that Zach Tom would have been the pick at 134 because you said it. The 49ers need a center, and Zach Tom is the epitome of versatility as well. He played left tackle, has the mold of a center, can play center as well. And I'm sure, given how the 49ers like to slide people to guard, that he would end up playing some form of guard had he been selected for the 49ers as well. But that provides you with potentially a day one starter at center. Obviously, coming out of that scheme over there in Wake Forest, I do think that it is somewhat similar. He is a pretty fast runner, right? He ran 4.94 at the combine, pretty athletic in a way. And I think that he definitely he could have had the ability to be a center for the NFL. But I think I liked the idea that he played left guard or left tackle as well over the last 2 seasons. I thought that was valuable for a player like him, and there's a reason that he didn't go or he didn't last much longer, right? The 49ers drafted at 134. He went at 140 to the Green Bay Packers, who likely get a starting caliber player on day one.
Did he go to the Packers or did he go to the Ravens?
My belief is that he went to the Packers at 140.
Okay. Okay, I thought it was the Ravens, but maybe they were just showing that on the screen when oh man, low key I liked the Packers draft, but that's another story. Let's move on to the 49ers next pick, their 5th round pick at 172 overall, cornerback Samuel Womack out of Toledo. There's a lot of green here. I mean, there's some things to like. Again, the 10-yard splits, the 20-yard splits, some very green there. He graded well. What do you think about this one? I thought this one was interesting because up to this point in the draft, the 49ers had met with every player that they had selected. And so this was one of their first selections who, at least to my knowledge and, public knowledge, they hadn't met with. He participated in the Hula Bowl. Maybe they met with him there. Who knows? He was a walk-on at Toledo, actually, which is pretty interesting. He ended up being a 3-year starter for them. He has experience in cover 3, cover 4 system. So there is some familiarity with what the 49ers are running there. But what do you see out of him? I know some people thought this was an interesting pick at this point in the draft.
Right. And I don't think that, I know a lot of people maybe weren't as happy with the selection. I do think that, honestly, this pick wasn't as bad as people thought it may be. Obviously, the player is unknown, right? I do think that the 49ers did talk with him. I remember when he was speaking for a little bit that he said that they had some sort of communication prior to the draft. He also is good friends with Ambry Thomas, which is an interesting factor in a way. I don't think that played into the draft selection, but him and Ambry Thomas both grew up in the Detroit area together, rivals, and they've remained in communication over the years. So that's an interesting fact. But speaking about the player itself, I think that this could be a day one starter at slot corner. I think that he definitely has a chance to compete with Diamaro Lenoir at the moment for that slot corner position. I'm really intrigued by the speed. Obviously, he ran a 4.4 like you see on the screen, and he plays bigger than his size. He's 5'10", 190. What do the 49ers like at the slot corner position? They like players like K'Waun Williams, who is a solid run defender, who played bigger than his size at 180 pounds and was able to wrap up in the run game. And I'm not saying that Samuel what's his last name again?
Womack.
I can't say it. Womack.
Yeah.
It's hard. I keep trying to say it every time I say it, and I keep getting it wrong. Samuel Womack. Yeah, in a way. But Samuel Womack, I think he plays bigger than his size in a way. And I'll watch more tape on him today. But to me, I think that it's an all right comparison. I don't think he's the soundest tackler for sure. I think that's the one kind of part that he probably has to improve on. But I do think that he has a choice. But for me, the one thing that I'm most impressive about is ball skills. This guy is around the ball a lot. Intercepted 2 passes last year, led the FBS with 17 pass breakups. So he, despite his short kind of height, he has long wingspan, which I think is important. He has long arms, and so that's helpful for him at that cornerback position. Do I think that they could have gone another direction of this pick? Yeah, definitely. I think that there were solid players on the board. I think there's still solid players on the board in the later rounds as well, given how deep this class was. but I'm fine with this pick. I don't necessarily think this was the best value of the pick. I think you could have probably got him later. But as we've seen with multiple occasions, the NFL circles know a little more than the media circles, right? They sometimes differ. So Womack might be on different players' boards a little earlier, like in the round 5, round 6 range. The 49ers probably didn't want to lose out on him. But the main last thing that I'll say is special teams contributor. I think that that's important. He at least has the ability to do that in his rookie year. Should he not make the starting caliber or starting lineup, I think he has the ability to be a special teams contributor, and the 49ers have really looked to address that position this offseason.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, the 49ers said that, or he said that the 49ers did tell him they view him as a slot corner and as a contributor on special teams. So
Right.
that's definitely on par with what you just said. And yeah, I mean, he's on the shorter end, but he's physical, he's fast. So there's definitely something to work with there for Womack. And, if he ends up being the starting nickel, I think we won't be complaining about where he got drafted, right? So we'll just have to wait and see, if he's able to start at nickel corner this upcoming season. I think that would be a good win for the 49ers. Moving on, let's look at now some 6th round selections. We have Fordham, offensive tackle, or in this, I guess he plays guard as well. Nick Zakelj. Very athletic, as you can see. We're looking at his RES score for the audio listeners. There's a lot of green, which is a very good thing. And I feel like at this point that maybe this is a good value pick, just considering how athletic he is. But at the same time, I do feel like there is some work that needs to be done on his end. His technique can use some work. But again, the 49ers, they're betting on athleticism. They can afford to do that. Like we mentioned earlier, they have a lot of guys on the offensive line that they can kind of just say, all right, have at it. One of you guys is going to be able to start. One of you guys is going to be our swing tackle. And who knows, maybe, Zakelj ends up being something for them, or someone who they can develop into a nice, piece on the offensive line. What do you think about Zakelj in this pick?
Yeah, so Zakelj was obviously an intriguing pick based on what we see in front of us. Great athlete, just great athlete. Obviously, the 10-yard split is what pops out, and as we spoke earlier, that kind of matters to the 49ers. One of the best 10-yard splits, and Zakelj, behind Cole Strange, was the second best interior offensive lineman at the combine in terms of testing, behind only Cole Strange, as I said. So that's another intriguing thing. 49ers are obviously going off upside here because athlete is there. He also has familiarity with the zone scheme. And I think the reason that he probably dropped a little more was because of his poor outing at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, when going to Fordham, he didn't necessarily play top-tier talent on a regular basis, goes to the Senior Bowl, and didn't really have his best outing there at the Senior Bowl, which was kind of a little disappointing probably because obviously we see a lot of players that rise in the Senior Bowl, a couple players that drop down in the Senior Bowl. I think Zakelj was kind of in the latter tier in a way. He wanted more out of that. That's what Tony Pauline himself said as well. But I thought he tested really well at the combine. As proven by what we saw there. I think he has the potential to be a guard. He said in his press conference after he was drafted, while he's most comfortable at tackle, he expects to play guard at the NFL, and he thinks that that's what best suits him at the NFL level. So I think he projects more as a guard. But again, he has the tackle versatility, just like Spencer Burford, our earlier selection. Another more projection pick. I actually think he's a little more sound than Burford at the moment. I personally believe that. Although I'm not the O-line expert, I think that he kind of has the better chance to start day one compared to Spencer Burford. But obviously, it's another transition where you have to transition from tackle to guard, which he only played guard a very limited amount, I think, at the Senior Bowl. And so that's kind of like the main experience he has. We'll see how he goes during the offseason. But again, another upside pick. The 49ers obviously feel fairly confident with their offensive line at the moment where they can draft upside picks for the later rounds. Do I think that that's the best strategy? Maybe not necessarily. I think that they could have tried to get immediate starters to compete. But again, this kind of shores up their offensive line depth and also kind of paves the way for Daniel Brunskill to potentially play center because you have guys filling that Daniel Brunskill role now with the two guys that you've drafted.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, I mean, we talked about the fact that he's going to be, um, you know, probably playing guard in the NFL. But John Lynch even said he provides some center flexibility as well. That's news to me. I mean, if he can do that, that would be a plus. At least if he would be some depth at center, that's great. You see some of his accolades here. He started 45 games. He was a three-time first team All Patriot League honor. And yeah, I mean, again, they're betting on athleticism and, seeing if they could develop these players into contributors. So the 49ers, more than, other teams can afford to do that.
Right.
So I'm not mad at this pick at all.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
All right, let's look at after that, I was really happy with the next pick. UCF defensive tackle Khalia Davis. He did not have an RAS score that I can show you because he did not
Right. He
have
didn't test
many
at the combine.
tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't test. He did tear his ACL in October, so he is coming off of that injury. But if you look at his play before that ACL tear, he is a beast, man. He's disruptive. He's a stuffer up the middle. He reminds me a lot of DJ Jones,
Yeah.
just like having that same impact. And John Lynch, pretty much said the same thing in the post draft presser as well. They see a lot of that in him. And I think he would have gone a lot sooner if he was healthy. So I think the 49ers get some good value here, even if, he's not going to be ready at the start of this season, which is also something that was said about him after the draft. So if he's not ready, they can afford that. They are stacked at defensive line. And so this was really a luxury pick for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that too. I mean, obviously, the 49ers are predicated on their defensive line. And sure, could they have gone center? Could they have gone safety? Could they have gone potentially with a more pressing need? Yeah, but in the sixth round, you kind of want this value. And I think Khalia Davis kind of fits that mold for you. Like you said, disruptive, run stuffer. And I personally also agree with the fact that he reminds you of DJ Jones. Why? He's a 302-pound guy, but like it shows on the screen, he was a former linebacker turned defensive lineman, meaning he has the bend of a linebacker in a way, which is a little more adequate than other players at the position. He also has the athleticism at the position as well, and I'm sure the testing would have reflected that. And so when you have a guy of that mold, despite being that big, can also be an athlete. It does remind you of DJ Jones, who's able to do crazy things in the backfield as a two-down guy. Yeah, experience at 3 tech and 1 tech is also important. And I think the biggest thing is this pick is essentially like a redshirt pick because the 49ers don't have to carry him on the 53-man roster. They'll likely put him on the PUP list, the physically unable to play list, or the NFL list. And they're going to be able to carry another defensive lineman that they would have otherwise had to have cut. They're going to be able to carry another guy, at least for the beginning of the season, on the 53-man roster, providing them with extra depth, preserving bodies as the season begins. And I think that's important, while also getting a player who could eventually be a starter for you on that defensive line, at least on run stuffing downs.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this pick, and we'll have to be patient, right? I mean, you said it. He might land on the pup list. He might land on the NFI, but when he's ready, I am completely, expecting him to be a contributor. So very excited. Now let's look at the 7th round pick. Oh wait, did I skip some? Yes, I did. Okay, I skipped one. Actually,
You got
okay,
one
so
more.
this is
Yeah.
this is the back-to-back picks that the 49ers had in the 6th round. And so I was excited about both of these picks. Sorry,
Ooh, yeah.
Tariq, I I missed you here. 6th round pick. They picked him up right after Khalia Davis at a Penn State cornerback. He was also another Senior Bowl participant. And I think this is another value pick for the 49ers. That's why I loved this back-to-back sequence for them in this draft. He was originally projected to go around early day 3, like 4th round. And, to get him in the 6th, I think that's some really great value for him. As you can see from his RES chart, I mean, a lot of grain, a lot of athleticism. So, it just speaks to what the 49ers have been going after this entire draft. Athleticism. You see a lot of that in this draft. So, what do you think about this pick?
Yeah, I honestly think that the 49ers got their two best selections back to back. Khalia Davis and Tariq Castro-Fields. Like the other picks were solid. Some were a little questionable, but I think these two were their best picks, with Tariq Castro-Fields being their best day 3 pick for sure. Castro-Fields, like you said, a 3rd or a 4th round pick, but as we saw with multiple players in this class, with such a deep class, the 49ers were able to get one of the players who unfortunately fell because of how deep this class was at multiple positions. And so Tariq Castro-Fields, you can see the athleticism. What do the 49ers like at the cornerback position? They love athletes. We've seen it before. Akella Witherspoon, we just drafted a 5th round corner in Samuel Womack, who is another athlete. And also he's a wide receiver turned cornerback. I didn't say that earlier, but that's another thing. Tariq Castro-Fields fits that mold. You see an elite 10-yard split. He's got a good off the jump. He also has a good 40-yard dash, meaning he can keep up going deep. Solid size as well, 6 foot, 197, around 200. That's what you want out of an outside corner. And so I do think that he probably is the best pick that we've made. What I like about him, press coverage. He's good with press coverage. He's got a good length, good athleticism. I think he can stay in press coverage. He's not a great tackler. That's the one thing he has to improve on. So I wonder how he fits into the 49ers mold, a team that normally but advocates for tackling at the quarterback position. We've seen that on countless occasions. So I wonder how can he develop that skill to be better at it and secure a better role for the 49ers. But yeah, good pick at in the 6th round. Definitely a value pick for a guy who you could have gotten 3 rounds earlier, and it would have been a fine selection. So I like the pick for sure. And I wonder what is his role for 2022. Does he move into the slot? Does he remain a boundary corner? Because the 49ers obviously need quality depth. We don't want Josh Norman. We don't want Drake Kirkpatrick coming back and playing key plays off the bench, off literally the street that we had last year. So this is quality depth. We now have a multitude of players at the position. Mosley, Travarius Ward. We have Ambry Thomas, Diamondo Lenore, Dante Johnson, Darqueze Dennard, and now our 2 rookies. That's 8 players in the cornerback room going into the offseason. Obviously, you probably expect around 6 players to make it, and maybe only 7 if you think that one of those players, like a Dante Johnson, perhaps profiles better at safety. So it is a deep room in a way, and I think that that's exciting. 49ers get a good player here who's a good projection going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you said it, they have a lot of depth, and I wouldn't be mad if they added Jason Verrett back into the mix as well. Just a veteran presence. There's a lot of young corners in this group. And so I think bringing him back wouldn't hurt. I mean, he has that injury history, I know, but, that's not going to hurt you when he's, lower on the depth chart.
Oh,
right?
shoot. So, oh, there we go. I see it. 49ers signed Donovan West.
They did. I was about to say that, actually. Yes.
Ooh,
that
yes.
Just came out. Oh man,
people thought, like, people were blaming the 49ers. Oh my God, you didn't draft center. You didn't draft a center. They go out and get the 2 best centers on the board in him and Mercer. Wow.
Exactly. I would have been so happy if they got Donovan West at any point today in the draft, and they end up getting him as a UDFA. Why do you think he, went undrafted?
I wonder if it's a medical thing. Obviously, these things come out after the draft.
Gotta wonder.
Because Donovan West, in my opinion, was a good pick. Also, Alec Lindstrom went undrafted, and I thought Alec Lindstrom and Jason Poe had a potential to be drafted. So maybe it's just a surplus at the position without a lack, because obviously center isn't as valuable to certain organizations. I know the 49ers value it, but not every organization values the center position. So it could have been a factor of those. One thing I pointed out, it's more of a conspiracy theory in a way, and I don't necessarily know. I'm not a conspiracy guy. But one thing I said in my space earlier today was I wonder if these players realize that they might make some more money. If they're going in the 7th round, they might make some more money as an undrafted free agent, given the amount of guaranteed money that they can make there versus
Good
the amount of
point.
guaranteed money that they can get as a prospect. So they might tell teams, don't draft me, and I'll sign with you as an undrafted free agent in a way. And so I know we're going to talk about the Brock Purdy pick in a minute, but I'll explain a little more when I get there. But that might be a thing. I'm not sure if that's true, but that might be a thing.
That's an interesting thought, actually, because I mean, as I was reading that Donovan West got signed as a undrafted free agent, I also saw that 6 other teams were interested in him, and he chose the 49ers coming in on, what they call a hefty, deal for a free agent at this point. $10,000 signing bonus and $100,000 guaranteed. So, I mean, that's not pretty bad for an undrafted guy, and definitely someone who a lot of people were after as the draft ended. Makes total
Definitely.
sense. I think that's some great value for the 49ers there. Very excited so far about this undrafted free agent group. We will continue talking about some of those names, actually. But first, let's talk about the final pick for the 49ers, the final pick in the NFL draft, Mr. Irrelevant. We are talking about Brock Purdy out of Iowa State. What do you think about Brock? I mean, honestly, I haven't done a lot of homework on any of the quarterbacks because I didn't
Right.
think we would even pick one. But he had a good completion percentage at Iowa State that always bodes well. John Lynch said he had some traits that reminded him of Nick Mullins. That's always a good sign as well. I mean, they liked Nick Mullins a whole lot. He wasn't a bad backup, so that's not too bad. And Purdy said he hit it off with the QB coach, Brian Grease, and also the assistant quarterback coach, Clay Kubiak. So what do you think about this pick?
So I'll be totally honest. My initial reaction was a negative one. I was like, when I saw it come on the screen, I was in the space. I was like, what the heck are we doing? Are we drafting a quarterback? And then my rational sex kind of kicked in. I'll give some reasoning into why we drafted Purdy. And so Purdy likely spends the year on the practice squad, right? He probably takes over the Nate Sudfeld role, unless we for some reason carry 3 quarterbacks on the roster in Lance, Sudfeld, and Purdy going into 2022. But Purdy was a guy who I'm assuming, like you said, hit it off with the coaching staff. The group wanted him potentially to eclipse or surpass Nate Sudfeld as the backup quarterback for the future. And he has solid traits. In a way, his pro comp for me is Jimmy Garoppolo. And what I mean by that is I don't think he necessarily has arm talent in a way, but to me, I think he's fairly accurate between the numbers, which is what Jimmy Garoppolo is best known for. And he works best out of play action, not necessarily when he has to process a lot or not necessarily it's because of the processing power, but out of the shotgun, obviously, with limited arm talent, I don't think that it best suits him. But out of the play action, when he's able to dictate and kind of control the pace of the game, I think Purdy is best in that range. And I know a lot of people were happy about the pick just because they like Brock Purdy in a way. But I think that in a way, it's a solid pick because you have, in a way, a backup quarterback there. And so to me, I think this signifies kind of 2 things. One, the 49ers weren't going to be able to get him as an undrafted free agent. He probably would have gone for more expensive money than what the 49ers probably paid for that 7th round pick as well. That's just my assumption. And 2, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't really have a spot on this roster anymore, which has been clear for the past couple of months. But now the 49ers have 4 quarterbacks on their roster. Obviously, you likely carry 2, max 3 on the 53-man roster. Purdy, to me, is probably a practice squad guy who they elevate as a 3rd quarterback on game days as part of that 55-man roster on game days. But that's what I feel about this selection. I wonder, like, after I do a little more study, is there more to him? Do I think he can be the quarterback number 2 in this class? And does this signify anything about Nate Sudfeld, who originally they were high on because of his mentorship with Trey Lance and his relationship there, but maybe they're not as bullish on him right now with this selection?
Yeah, interesting you mentioned that. I mean, it'd be hard to imagine that they don't believe in Sudfeld as a backup quarterback. I mean,
Right.
he he has some guarantees to his contract, right? So
And hefty guarantees, yeah.
yeah, so I'd imagine he sticks around for that reason, and so maybe Purdy, will revert to the practice squad, after the 53 is assembled, and we'll see. I mean, hopefully, like you said, hopefully this means Jimmy Garoppolo is not on the roster much longer. We don't
Right.
know. There's a lot of talk about uh, Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield garnering some potential interest from the Panthers. So we'll see what happens. There's definitely some time here before we get into training camp and all that
Mhm.
to sort all of that out. But oh shit, my light almost fell. Let's get back to some of these undrafted. Okay, I got one more slide. This
You
is
got
the entire
okay.
this is the
Oh, the entirety of
entire
it.
draft class really quick. Want to get your grades on what you think of the entire class as a whole.
So I can't go really any higher than a B plus, and in reality, I don't think it's a B plus. I probably would put it to a B minus to a B. Drake Jackson, obviously the A plus pick. Tyrion
Yes.
Davis Price. Me personally, I love the player, not the pick. I don't think that as a third rounder, I don't think that that was as valuable for a running back with positions like safety on the board and interior offensive line if you wanted to go there. I was thinking about it in the sixth round about running backs. There were running backs like Devontae Price still available, and I'm not
Mhm.
saying that he's a better player than Ty Davis Price, but the value of a sixth round pick like a Devontae Price in the sixth round, I think it would have been better than the value of a Tyrion Davis Price. Regardless, it's interesting because I think Tyrion Davis Price is going to be the best contributor out of this entire class in 2022. I think I personally believe that alongside Danny Gray and Drake Jackson. Gray, I also love the pick, but in the on day three, I wasn't as high maybe on the players. Obviously, Burford and Nick Zakelji, I thought that they were both kind of projection players. I didn't necessarily think that both of them were immediate starters potentially. Although Zakelji, I think, could push maybe to compete. Womack could be the day one starter at slot corner with that size and speed, but obviously a little bit of a reach in my opinion, given that he was projected as a seventh round pick. Castro-Fields was a great pick. Khalia Davis was a great pick, and I'm fine with the Brock Purdy pick. So I'd say around a B minus to a B, somewhere around there.
I'm pretty much on the same page. Yesterday, I gave them a B grade again because I thought Drake Jackson was an A plus pick.
Right.
Danny Gray, I really liked that pick, but again, Ty Davis Price, it's not a reflection of the player to me. Like he can be a great running back, right?
Mhm.
And by all accounts, it looks like he is, but value. You mentioned it, value third round, no, like that's not when you get running backs. And
Right.
they have a history of not getting the best running back value out of the third round. I mean, Trey Sermon just last year, you look at their history there with some of the other running back picks that they've made, and it just hasn't turned out well for them. Hopefully, Davis Price could be the exception to that. But I still have a bit of an issue with that pick, considering it is of value with third round. So aside from that, though, for me today, Khalia Davis and Tariq Castro Fields also saved the day for the
Mhm.
49ers. Those are two picks that I really liked. Great value again in the sixth round and back to back. So I loved those both. So I'm also leaning, B or B minus for this draft.
I think for
No,
me as well, I'll say
yeah,
real quick, I think for me as well, some part of the reason that this draft kind of downgraded for me is because I think so many other teams had great drafts. And
yeah,
that's where I think a part of ours, like a B or B minus for other classes might be better, like other years might be better. But for me, a B or B minus is probably in the bottom 10 of every team in the draft class. And it makes sense, right? We didn't have a first round pick. So you're not necessarily going to get the value that other teams like the Jets, who had 3 first round picks, are going to have. But I didn't think that this was a home run draft class necessarily. When over the next 2 years, I think you're going to need a home run draft class, given how you're going to have a lot of roster turnover, right? Which means you need those
yes.
guys that can stay. And based on last year's class, doesn't seem very, very high for Trey Sermon, who was a third-round selection, and we don't know exactly about guys like Diamondre Lenoir, who they don't seem too confident about. At least we haven't heard confidence surrounding Diamondre Lenoir from the front office specifically. And so it's interesting where last year's class will face, because over the next couple of years, like the Rams have done in years past when they've had to deal with roster turnover, they've hit on draft picks consistently. And that's going to be up to the 49ers in the front office to continuously do that over the next couple of years until we face some more stability in terms of roster construction.
Yeah, and speaking of the Rams, I like they grabbed a safety and a cornerback as well today that were at great value for them. So, to your point, they draft well at those positions of need and those positions where they have that turnover. So hopefully, 49ers, all of these are hits. As we know, not every pick in any draft is going to be a hit, but, hopefully some of these, at least in the positions of need, end up performing well for the 49ers. Now, I am very excited, right? So I wanted to skip over that really quick, but now let's talk about the undrafted free agents because, dude, I am excited about some of these names. The first name we heard was Jason Poe. Again, a player I would have been so excited if they had drafted this guy like in the late, 6th or 7th round. And look at us, man, getting Jason Poe at this stage. I think that's a great pick, great value. We also have wide receiver Tay Martin out of Oklahoma State, linebacker, two linebackers actually, Segun Alubi from San Diego State, Jeremiah Gamel out of North Carolina, another corner, Taylor Hopkins out of San Diego State, another wide receiver, Tazier Mack out of Pitt. And we got Leon O'Neal out of Texas A&M. I know a lot of people were like, oh, like 49er fans are overhyping this guy. Dude, as an undrafted free agent, that's great value for him. Like, I don't really know how he ended up going undrafted. I think he was, yes, maybe some 49er fans were getting a little too excited about him, but, I still think he probably should have gotten drafted late. Now the 49ers have him as an undrafted free agent. A couple other names that came in after we started this show, offensive lineman Sam Schluter, as well as UCLA DB Quantrez Knight. And as we mentioned a little bit ago, Arizona State center Donovan West. Rohan, what do you think about some of these names? Like, who excites you the most?
Yeah, so I'll start with the one you started off or you ended with, in Donovan West, because I heard some information. He got paid $100,000 guaranteed, and it just shows, right? Some of these players, well, they're not going to get drafted. They're going to get their money regardless, in a way. And I think Donovan West just got that money with $100K guaranteed. For me, the guys that excite me the most, let's just talk about the positions of need in a way first. Center is obviously one of them. We got two of them, Jason Poe and Donovan West, and I thought both were draftable players. I know people were clamoring to draft West in the 3rd, West in the 4th, West in the 5th, 6th, and 7th. We get him as an undrafted free agent. That's phenomenal value. And obviously my draft grade before is based on the draft itself, not the undrafted free agents, because I think the 49ers hit the ball out of the park with these undrafted free agents. Another guy a little bit more underrated, Jeremiah Jamel. I think that he should have been drafted as well out of North Carolina. And we know what the 49ers do with linebackers. DeMeco Ryans is the cornerstone of that defense. Jeremiah Gamel, I think, has the potential to be a diamond in the rough. And the 49ers like these undrafted linebackers, right? Last year, who did they pay $180,000 to? It was Justin Hilliard out of Ohio State. They tried stashing him on the practice squad. Unfortunately, he got picked up by the New York Giants. And it just shows to a testament how other teams believe that the guys that the 49ers like they like the guys that the 49ers like, especially at the linebacker position, because of how well respected DeMeco Ryans is. And Hilliard was picked up. I think Jamel is a good pick. I think Poe is solid. I think Donovan West is. And I think Poe and West definitely can compete to make the roster, right? When you look at it, I don't know how high they are on Jake Brendel. I'm fairly sure that he can be moved on if he loses out to Poe or Donovan West. I think that one guy that the 49ers haven't really made a lot of buzz on is Justin Skule coming back from a torn Achilles. I think with the selection of our two guys today, who potentially could also be swing tackles, alongside the addition of Jalen Moore from last year, who's shown experience as a swing tackle, I don't know his future with the 49ers, especially if the 49ers do like both Poe and Mercer, Poe out of Mercer and West out of Arizona State, because those guys have center guard flexibility, which is almost as valuable as guard tackle flexibility. I like the linebacker. I like these two. And Leon O'Neal, I'll touch a bit on that, because me personally, I'm not as high as other people are on Leon O'Neal. The reason is I don't think he's a great scheme fit. I think he's a solid player because he delivers on instinct, right? But to me, the 49ers need athletes at safety position. Leon O'Neal really didn't test well. He's not really that fast on in game speed as well. I think he's more of an instinctual player that's extremely valuable. But the 49ers kind of have their guy who's a box safety in a way, not necessarily as athletic, in Talanoa Hufanga. And also 49ers fans are bullish that he can be he can be a day one starter, because he doesn't possess the versatility and the athleticism that, most importantly, the 49ers require at the safety position opposite of Jimmy Ward.
A lot of people have been saying as of late, George Odom.
Oh yeah, I think he'll get a fair shot to compete. I think that because a lot of people were looking at his last year tape, right, where he had 7 starts at safety. I think that he definitely could, because Tarvarius Moore we don't know about, and Hufanga, I'm with a lot of people. I don't think that he's a situational guy. Just don't think that he can be a day one starter right away.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So who knows? I mean, Odom could definitely be one of those sleeper signings. See, if it was someone on the defensive line who maybe underperformed or didn't have a huge role, we'd be like, oh yeah, this is like perfect signing. And then Odom came along and it was like, oh, he's just a special teams guy. No, I mean, I think for some time, I was scared to say it, but I think they do view him as a potential starter at the very least. And seeing who they drafted or who they didn't draft, they didn't draft safeties. That tells you all you need to know about how they feel about that group. Yeah, you said it. 49ers media Tart, he could be back. John Lynch did say, he hasn't closed the door on that. So if that makes sense for the team, they could absolutely bring him back. And, that's an option as well. I would not hate that at all. I think they want to see what Odom looks like first before making that decision. Tarvarius Moore as well. And so they'll go from there. But, it's good to know that they could always bring him back if they would like. Once again, for those of you guys watching, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Some names that were not listed on here that the 49ers have signed as undrafted free agents since we started the stream: Arizona State Donovan West, UCLA DB Quan Trez Knight, and Gophers offensive lineman Sam Schluter. You had a bit of a reaction to Sam Schluter when I first mentioned his name, Rohan. Did you have any thoughts on him?
So I thought that he was an interesting player. I didn't he was a guy that I kind of stumbled upon. I didn't really watch him, but then I stumbled upon him and I thought he would have been an all right player, because obviously he played opposite of Daniel Faalele. And I think he has a bit of potential out there coming out of Minnesota. I'll be interested to see where he kind of slides in at the NFL level. Do I think he's a really good 49ers player? Not necessarily. He's 6'6", about 310, but I don't think that he has the speed to kind of keep up in a outside zone scheme, at least with the players that we've drafted and that we currently have on the roster. But it's an interesting name just to throw in the mix for training camp for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'm very happy with what they're doing in free agency so far after the draft. And I mean, I don't know, they have a pretty solid history of some undrafted free agents panning out. So I think some of these names have that potential as well. I feel pretty good about the draft overall. Again, it feels like the 49ers, they have a different view of their team than, us fans, and, different perception, out of the positions that we felt they needed. They didn't feel they needed as badly. So we'll see how it turns out for them. I mean, maybe it will be all right. And I'm very excited for the season. I'm so glad that the draft is over. This has been such an exhausting process following all of this for the last
The
month, and
last 2
especially
weeks,
the last 2 weeks have been
especially, yeah,
crazy. They've
yeah.
been
But
really crazy.
now sit back, relax, and we get to see what these players do. I mean, sit back and relax for like 2 weeks. Off-season program for the 49ers starts in May, end of May, somewhere
Exactly.
around there.
Exactly. And then we're going to get started going again. Rohan, thank you so much for coming on with me today and talking about day 3 of the draft. Real quick, plug your socials for us.
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Twitter at Rohan Chakravarthi. For those of you that like my article work, you can go ahead to 49ers Web Zone. I contribute them, cover the 49ers for them. And then obviously I have my own podcast as well with Marco Martinez, my co-host, 49ers Red Zone. Be sure to tap in. We go live every week. But Steph, thank you for having me on. Obviously, it's a pleasure. 49er K podcast, pleasure to come along. And thank you for having me on. And yeah, we'll definitely catch up after the draft.
Of course, man. It's been a pleasure. You've been killing it this whole draft cycle. So very happy to have you on and talk draft with me here today. All right, you guys listening, make sure to subscribe. Make sure you like this video. If you guys want to break down a review of the day 2 picks that the 49ers made, make sure you catch that. It's on the YouTube channel. I talked with Akash on some of those players. So, but have a good night, everyone. Enjoy this post-draft, rest that we have now for a little bit, and peace.